How do we know a person is depressed? Well, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM, essentially uses a cookbook approach. There's a list of symptoms, and for most disorders, people have to have a certain number of them at a certain intensity or duration, or both, in order to fit the definition. In the case of depression, there are really two diagnoses to make. Major depressive disorder is what we normally think of as clinical depression. It mainly means that a person has had one or more fully diagnosable episodes of depression, which we call major depressive episodes, MDEs. The tricky part is that major depressive episodes can appear as part of several different disorders, of which the most common are major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. I'm going to bypass bipolar for now and focus on major depression. In order to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder, you not only have to have had at least one major depressive episode, you also cannot have ever had a hypomanic or manic episode. These are periods of unusually high or energetic mood which have their own symptom list. If a person has had one or more of those, we start thinking about bipolar disorder instead. So, major depressive episode can be part of major depression or bipolar, but this begs the question, what is a major depressive episode? This is a period of at least 2 weeks of significant disruption of mood and functioning. There are essentially two lists of symptoms, and you have to have had at least one from column A, plus enough from column B in order to make a total of 5 in all. And they have to be intense enough to meet the definitions given. So, believe me, I know, it sounds like a menu at a takeout restaurant. That's how psychiatric diagnosis works. So, okay, what's column A? This is a very short list of 2 symptoms. The person has to have had at least one of them. If they don't, it doesn't matter how many from column B they have, they cannot be formally diagnosed with depression. At least not if they're an adult, which is all I'm talking about here. It gets more complicated if we're talking about kids. We'll leave that aside for the moment. And before I say anything else, I'll point something out. Nobody gets to diagnose themselves. I've been treating depression for over 30 years, but I could not give myself a formal diagnosis. For that, someone else has to do it. And there's a reason. None of us is very objective when it comes to our own experience. You need an outside observer, someone trained in diagnosis. So do not use this series of posts to diagnose yourself. If you listen to these videos and you wonder if you're depressed, please see your physician or a qualified psychologist. Don't assume anything. There's another issue. There are 2 kinds of people in the world. There's you and there's everyone else. And they're completely different. You are the only person who can feel your emotions and mental state from the inside. You have access to all of your weird thoughts and all of your desperately awful feelings and all of your irrational impulses. You don't have that with anyone else. The result is you will always look weirder to yourself than anyone else does. Those other people on the street, they have what they think are strange thoughts and feelings too, but you cannot see them. All you see is their outfit and the way that they walk and how they hold themselves. And they probably look generally pretty solidly put together. You cannot see anyone else's unusual aspects, just yours. So people always look bad to themselves. There's an experience that almost everyone has who goes through mental health training. You read through the DSM to try to learn the diagnoses. You know, and you look at that one and you think, okay, oh, that sounds a little bit like me. And I seem, oh gosh, I meet 5 criteria. How many do I need? Oh, I need 4. And I think I've got that one, and I think I've got this one, and I think I've got this one, and so on. This is so common, it actually has a name, and the name is intern's syndrome. It happens in physical medicine too. Every medical student who studies communicable disease thinks at one time or another that she's desperately sick. Every cardiology resident secretly thinks their heart is about to give out. It goes with the territory. And in mental health, it's worse because most of the symptoms are continua. Do you ever have difficulty sleeping? Why, yes, I do. Do you sometimes feel inexplicably low in energy? Yeah. Do you ever do things that you used to like and you get no enjoyment out of them? Sometimes, yes. Do you ever wonder if you actually locked the front door and you have to go back and check? Yeah. It's easy to think you have every problem in the book. So again, don't diagnose yourself. These videos are designed to be informative, not to create a bunch of sick interns. So if anything I say really worries you, go see someone in person. Okay, so I've been saying there's 2 items in column A, and to be diagnosed as clinically depressed, a person has to have at least one of them strong enough and long enough. So what's the first one? Low mood. Surprise. The person's mood has to be down or depressed most of the day, nearly every day, for at least 2 weeks. And that most of the day, nearly every day, MOD, NED thing, it's true for almost all the symptoms. It can't be an occasional thing, and a few days of it does not count. Most of us will have a few days here and there. That's not depression. That's a different disorder called life. We're talking about a low mood that gets kind of stuck. Now, what kind of low mood are we talking about? People that have never been there often think that it's sadness. Well, most people who have been depressed say that sadness doesn't really cut it. Sadness is this kind of warm, wistful emotion. I'm sitting indoors on a rainy day with my tea, and my puppy is off with my dog sitter, and my friends are out of town, and I'm alone here reading my book. That's not what most people with depression feel. Despair is a little closer. This is a feeling that everything is gone from you, plus a strong sense that it's never coming back. Another word that comes up is emptiness. Like all the color has drained out of the world, and all that's left is this bleak, pointless nothingness. Nothing is here, and if it was here, it wouldn't touch me anyway. Nothing can get through it. We don't realize it, but we don't actually live out there in the real world. We live inside, where the real world is playing out in our senses. But we're also thinking about the future. We're making associations between things. Oh, look, that book reminds me of Joan. And half the time, there's also bits of music or old commercials or conversations playing out in the background while we make plans for what comes next. But during depression, it often feels like all of that internal world has stopped, and all we're left with is the dirty dishes and that carpet we've never liked, and people rushing around us to do pointless things that we don't care about. A client of mine said that it was like having your skull hollowed out by an ice cream scoop. Complete, empty bleakness. Sadness? No. Nothingness. So now that I've brought you down, I'm going to leave it there for a bit. Next time, I'll talk about the other symptom in column A, anhedonia. But before I go, I'll mention something else. That flat emptiness that people feel just seems like it will never go away. It can't ever go away. It's impossible. Now that you've felt it, you can't ever not feel it, right? No. It's a normal symptom of depression. Millions of people experience that feeling, and then it goes away. That's part of the point of therapy and most of the point of self-care. You do these things which don't seem like they could ever touch an abyss like this feeling. And then they do. Depression brings with it a powerful sense of permanence, but that's a symptom, not a reality. We often don't know how long it'll last, but we know that for the vast majority of people, it will eventually shrink and crack and flake apart and eventually go away. The goal of therapy isn't to end that. It's just to speed it up, because it'll happen anyway. You can get How to Be Miserable from your local bookseller or from Amazon. The link's below.